The man in the video spoke just once. She won't remember. Then silence. A girl, young, blindfolded, motionless. A hand brushed her cheek. A gold ring flashed under red-tinted light. The technician froze the frame. Zoomed. Again. Again. The face was half-turned, but the voice print didn't hesitate. 99.7%. The analyst looked up, pale. "Do you know who that is?" Pam Bondi didn't answer. She was staring at the ring. Trump stepped forward. He didn't whisper the name. He said it like a judge passing sentence. "Clinton." A locked conference room. No phones, no digital copies. Just one hardwired screen. The clip replayed, the same scene, the same voice. She won't remember. Dan Bongino rubbed his jaw, watching. Jesus. Kash Patel sat stiff, arms crossed. We already cross-referenced the footage metadata with travel logs. It matches. Pam didn't flinch. That room's in the main house. Epstein's Trump didn't look at the screen. How many more tapes are there? 14 total. 2 flagged as political risk, high. This was one of them. Trump turned to Bondi. You said the list was on your desk. She nodded. Not anymore. Justice Department, a silent war room. Garland stood alone, the pause frame in front of him. Aide behind him, hesitant. Sir, the footage has been duplicated. Garland's jaw clenched. How many copies? One confirmed in Bondi's possession. Another in a closed evidence channel routed through internal review. No leaks yet. Garland tapped the folder beside him. Top sheet read, Subject Clinton, Classification Level 5, Red Line Directive Active. He closed the folder slowly. They weren't supposed to find this. That footage was sealed under older protocols. The aide didn't speak. Garland turned. Issue the standard national security classification. Frame it as unverifiable intelligence. Discredit the chain of custody if needed. Sir, if this leaks, it won't. He left the room. Night in D.C., a black SUV sat under a parking garage, motor off. Inside, Pam Bondi took a slow breath. A burner phone vibrated. The department just requested full digital inventory of the sealed evidence pool, the voice said. They know we have it. I'm not deleting anything, she replied. I didn't say you should, but they will. She ended the call. Outside, a gust of wind swept through the concrete rafters. She opened the case next to her. 3 items, a flash drive, a printed list, and a signed affidavit. At the top of the page, primary individuals of interest, Epstein footage, number 3. Name William Clinton. Trump stood in his Mar-a-Lago office, flipping through a binder of old speeches. One page caught his eye, a speech from 10 years ago, his words in bold print. Clinton is going to have a problem with that island. He chuckled. Bongino stepped in. Diddy's lawyer just filed a withdrawal. Statement says, under no circumstances can I continue representation. No explanation. Trump didn't look up. He saw it. Think he recognized Clinton? Trump closed the binder. They all do. The question is who has the guts to say it out loud. In Brooklyn detention, Diddy paced, restless, skin slick with sweat. A guard stopped at his cell. Your guy quit. Diddy stared. He said he'd rather defend terrorists than deal with this. Left a statement, filed and sealed. The guard walked away. Diddy sat on the edge of the cot. He whispered something under his breath. A name. Across town, Garland returned to his office. On his desk, a memo, stamped at the top. Interagency warning, political risk escalation. He read it once. Then again, a handwritten note at the bottom. If the name leaks, control is lost. He lit a match. The paper curled and blackened. Garland stared into the flame. You were supposed to stay buried. A war room disguised as a conference suite. Low ceiling, dull lights. The air tasted like static and quiet panic. 2 agents entered. One carried a case like a coffin. They opened the screen. A list of sealed files glowed blue. 14 digital vaults, each a potential autopsy of American power. File 3 was locked. A message blinked. Access denied. Authorization exceeds internal clearance. One agent muttered under his breath. Someone built a kingdom out of secrets. The other tapped the screen. and we just knocked on its front gate. At the Justice Department, Garland stood before a podium as if defending a fortress breached by fire. Behind him, aides shifted uncomfortably. Cameras clicked. Flash bulbs flickered like warning lights in a submarine. Garland's voice was cool, too smooth for the weight behind it. The department cautions against the spread of false claims intended to damage public institutions. Investigations are ongoing. No individual has been identified. We urge restraint. But restraint was already dead. A reporter raised her hand. Her tone was surgical. Is it true the video features a former president? Garland's eyes sharpened, but his smile remained. We do not confirm speculative material rooted in unverified chain of custody narratives. Another voice cut in, louder. What about Diddy's lawyer? His statement said, under no circumstances. Garland's hand twitched. Then came the pivot. This press conference is over. No applause, only silence. The kind that follows a gunshot no one saw. Trump's private office, Mar-a-Lago. The lights were low, the windows closed, the room thick with the scent of old leather and war plans. Kash Patel placed the transcript on the table like a courtroom exhibit. Trump read the words again. She won't remember. It was taken care of. No one else saw anything. He looked up. No anger. Just the stare of a general tracing the map of a battlefield he already owns. Pam Bondi leaned forward. The DOJ will bury this. The press won't move unless we set the fire ourselves. Patel spoke calmly. We leak the existence, not the identity. Let them feel the ground shake before they know why. Trump rose, his hand closed into a fist. They built this empire out of stolen bricks. It's time someone ripped out the foundation. He looked at Bondi. Light the match. At the department, Garland entered a secured situation room. No windows. One long table. 12 faces. A red folder sat in the center. Across the walls, screens blinked with media alerts. Lawyer walks away, video rumors, grow Trump, hints at revelation Garland didn't sit. This is not a leak. This is an offensive. He gestured toward the folder. We respond in kind. Find a narrative, any narrative, and flood it. A young staffer hesitated. Sir, they have video. Garland turned sharply. Then drown it in noise. Give the press a scandal. Give them 3. Lie if you must. But control the map. His voice dropped. Before they redraw it in blood. Back in D.C., Bondi stood alone in a side room, a copy of the list in her hand. The walls felt close, the air hot, but her fingers didn't shake. She pulled out a secure line. Dialed. We're ready. Start with the mention, not the name. The world needs to hear the sound of a giant cracking. On the other end, someone simply said, understood. She hung up, took one last look at the name at the top, William Clinton, and smiled, not with joy, but with justice sharpened like steel. In a Manhattan studio, Dan Bongino stepped in front of the camera. No teleprompter, just fire. You ever watched a castle collapse? It doesn't happen in silence. It groans, it moans, it spits stone, and screams its last. He pointed to the lens. They want you quiet. They want you blind. But the kingdom they built on the bones of victims is starting to slide. He paused. And I say let it fall. Off camera, Patel nodded once. At Brooklyn detention, Diddy sat across from his new lawyer. The walls pulsed with fluorescent flickers. The sound of distant boots echoed like closing doors. She placed a legal pad on the table. He didn't touch it. They said you'd talk. He smirked. Talk? You think this is about me? Then what is it? He leaned forward, voice like gravel. This is about a man who wasn't supposed to be in that video. Silence. Say his name. I don't have to. The whole country will hear it soon. She studied him. You think this ends with you? He leaned back. Number it begins with me. Midnight. Trump stood on the Mar-a-Lago balcony, wind lifting the edge of his coat. Below, the sea moved like a slow conspiracy. Bondi joined him, file in hand. We've confirmed 3 names. One is sitting on a panel. One's on the donor board of a major NGO. The third, she handed him a photo. Trump stared at it. Of course it's him. He turned back to the ocean. When this hits, it won't be politics anymore. Bondi nodded. It'll be war. He didn't blink. Good. Morning haze cloaked Washington in a sickly gold. The kind of morning that felt like it knew something before anyone else did. On every screen across the Capitol, headlines erupted like mortars. New footage linked to Epstein. Raid billionaire lawyer resigns under no circumstances. DOJ silent. Trump team rumbling. Inside DOJ headquarters, Garland stood before a room of intelligence directors. The walls were armored in screens and silence. He pointed to the map projected above them. Names, locations, flights, legal triggers, strings of influence like veins feeding a rotten heart. This is the battlefield, Mon, Garland said. They want to make it a courtroom. We make it a chessboard. He gestured to one node blinking red. Bondi. They move again. We open 3 investigations, financial audits, foreign contracts, anything that stinks. Someone asked, and if they leak the name? Garland didn't blink. We deny, deflect, and bury. We burn the autopsy before the coroner speaks. The leak hit before noon. Not a name, not even a face. Just one sentence posted through 3 anonymous accounts. The voice on file 3 has been identified. 3 minutes later, Bondi entered a secure room. Inside, Trump, Patel, Bongino. No words. Just tension, like the 5 seconds before a verdict. Trump glanced at the screen. Twitter boiling, networks scrambling. The DOJ caught flat-footed. They'll spin, Bongino said. Say it's fake, deep fake, edited. They'll scream until they lose their breath, Bondi added. But they won't deny it outright. Not yet. Trump's voice was cold steel. Because they know it's real. He turned to Patel. You ready? Patel nodded once, fist clenched. We dropped the second statement. Today. Across town in a glass studio tower, a network producer screamed into his headset. Shut down segment 5. Bring in legal. Cut the Epstein montage now. The anchor stared at the teleprompter, frozen. Do I say the name? Silence on the line. Then, no. You don't. We still have donors on his board. She looked into the camera. Developing now. New unrest around sealed evidence tied to a late billionaire sex trafficker. Sources say high-level political figures may be implicated. She paused. Her gaze sharpened. We will follow where this story leads. The room behind her erupted. Half panic, half applause. Garland's office. The air was colder now, as if something dead had entered and never left. His aide whispered, They're saying the name in closed threads. It's already spreading. Garland stared out the window. Then we changed the terrain. He walked to the cabinet, unlocked a drawer, pulled out an envelope marked Red Directive. Inside, a plan already written. Not legal, not constitutional, just effective. He dropped it on his desk. Tell the task force, if they don't want a trial, we don't give them one. Miami, airport tarmac, private hangar. Bondi waited by the steps of a chartered jet. Trump descended, coat flicking in the wind. No security detail, just resolve. You're flying out? She asked. Meeting. Quiet one, but not secret. She handed him a folder. Name 2 and 3 just lit up. They're sending teams to scrub the files. Trump flipped it open. 2 faces. Familiar. Protected. Guilty. He didn't sigh. He smiled. They built a fortress out of favors. Let's see how it handles fire. A bar in D.C. somewhere east of Capitol Hill. 2 journalists hunched over a laptop. Watching, rewinding, watching again. A still frame. The ring. The voice. She won't remember. One whispered, Is that really? The other cut him off. Doesn't matter. If it is, the whole scaffolding of power is built on sand. He closed the laptop. Write it up. Even if it gets us killed. He downed the rest of his whiskey. Especially then. Night fell like a final curtain. In a quiet office, Garland read the memo. Leak confirmed. Narrative fractured. Public sentiment unstable. Below, a note scrawled in ink. The list is on her desk. And the clock just started ticking. He lit a match. Burned the page. Watched the flames. This was never supposed to be a war. Then turned away. At Mar-a-Lago, Trump stood by the sea. Wind clawed at the edge of the flag above him. The waves roared like an army. Behind him, Bondi approached. They're mobilizing fast. They're calling this an assault on democracy. Trump didn't turn. It's not an assault, it's a reckoning. He looked at her. They called me a disruptor, a hammer, a threat to the order. He pointed toward the ocean, voice rising. That order was built on silence, and we just tore the lock off the vault. A long beat. Then he said it. Tomorrow we speak the name. The name had not yet been said, but it was everywhere. On screens, in whispers, beneath headlines that danced around it like children circling a fire they weren't ready to touch. And behind the curtain, the old guard moved. A meeting room under the Capitol, deep beneath the Senate chambers. No windows, phones collected at the door, 12 men and women, suits worth more than the average mortgage. Old names, older loyalties. Garland stood at the head. His tone was no longer calm, it was clinical. The leak destabilized the press cycle. The asset identified in File 3 remains officially unacknowledged, but the public has begun triangulating. The risk matrix is moving. A man in Navy interrupted. How long until the name crosses air? Garland didn't hesitate. Too soon. If we don't reinforce the perimeter, it will fracture. He stepped forward. This is not about innocence or guilt. It's about structure, the scaffolding we built over decades. If it collapses now, everything beneath it will be crushed. Another voice, sharp and seasoned. And what do you propose? Garland opened a folder. Inside, 3 plans: political interference, judicial stall, and a final resort labeled only Nightingale. He tapped the middle option. We slow the wheel, not stall, not destroy, just enough drag to keep the system from grinding truth into daylight. He closed the folder. This isn't just a defense, it's preservation. And if we lose that, the map of power gets redrawn by people who never asked permission. At a private location in Virginia, Trump stared at a whiteboard covered in lines, faces, affiliations. It looked like a war board, because it was. Dan Bongino traced a red circle. 3 judges have ties to Phil 3, 2 sitting, 1 retired, all appointed under the same umbrella. He pointed to another corner. Media anchors, defense attorneys, foundation executives. They're not random. They're coordinated. They're the shield. Kash Patel nodded. They built a circle, not just to protect the man in the footage, but the entire machine he represents. Trump didn't speak. His eyes were fixed on a name halfway down the board. Clinton. He finally spoke, low and steady. They didn't build a shield. They built a sanctum and called it patriotism. Across the country, newsrooms exploded in argument. A producer threw his headset. No, we don't run that name unless it's confirmed by 2 federal sources in the DOJ. Otherwise, we're opening a legal crater we'll never climb out of. A junior reporter pushed back. It's already out there. People are stitching audio comparisons, digging into old logs. If we don't say it, someone else will. The anchor leaned in, voice calm but taut. This isn't about one man. It's about whether truth is still allowed past the gates. Everyone in the room went silent. Then the producer spoke again, quieter this time. There are names we were never meant to pronounce. Department of Justice Headquarters. Garland alone in his office. He looked at a photo on his desk. Younger men. Younger wars. A time when secrets had more room to breathe. He opened a drawer, pulled out a sealed envelope marked Civic Containment Protocol. Not legal, but effective. He didn't open it, not yet. Instead, he wrote one name on a yellow note, slid it across the desk to his aide. Keep this out of subpoenas. If it's requested, redirect to parallel review. The aide picked it up, read it, didn't say a word, just nodded and left. Garland closed his eyes for a moment. Let the fire rage outside the circle, but not inside. In a suburban basement, lit by one desk lamp, a former intelligence officer watched the leaked clip again. Pause. Rewind. Enhance. He didn't speak, just tapped a spot in the frame. A photo on the wall. Not the man. The photo. It showed 4 people on a boat. One of them was smiling at the camera. He cross-referenced it against a travel log, a funder registry, a campaign record. He whistled low, then picked up the phone. You're going to want to see this. At Mar-a-Lago, Bondi dropped a packet onto the table. 3 more journalists got flagged, all with ties to a former legal team involved in the Epstein settlements. Trump flipped through the pages. They're still trying to control the leak, but they've stopped denying. That's the tell. Kash Patel entered. The phrase has started trending. Trump looked up. What phrase? Patel showed him the screen. Circle of protection? Trump stared at it, then said quietly, good. Now we name what they're protecting. It began with a name, half spoken on a podcast, wrapped in legal hypotheticals. Then it slid into subreddits, Telegram channels, comment sections. Then, at 8:12 a.m., Fox News said it out loud. A panel of three. One of them cracked under pressure. Well, let's not ignore the fact that File 3 is widely believed to implicate Clinton. Silence. 3 beats passed. Then the anchor shifted, cleared his throat, and moved on. But the avalanche had started. By noon, the name was everywhere. In a press room buzzing like a beehive on fire, DOJ spokespeople scrambled to regain control. The department cannot verify the origin or authenticity of any alleged footage, the official read aloud, sweat beading on his brow. No individual has been charged. But no one was listening. Outside the glass wall, reporters pounded out headlines like hammers breaking stone. Clinton named in Epstein file leak. White House silent Trump team. Hints at bigger names to come. The story had legs now. It didn't walk. It ran. In a private residence 2 miles from the Capitol, a war council assembled. Trump, Bondi, Patel, Bongino. 3 aides, all silent. The living room had been stripped of furniture, only folding chairs and a table with documents. A flat screen flickered. Bongino pointed to a pause clip. Morning show cracked. Said his name live. There's no walking it back. Bondi stood at the window, the blinds drawn, her voice low but electric. They're going to spin this as a political attack. Frame us as election saboteurs. Patel laid out a timeline. They've already activated Nightingale. Trump looked up sharply. What did they hit? Patel handed him a report. 2 of our witnesses, IRS audits. One just lost federal security clearance. Another's wife got subpoenaed on an unrelated case. Trump's jaw tightened. This isn't cleanup. This is carpet bombing. He stood. No more leaks. No more hints. We go public. We don't talk around the circle anymore. He leaned forward, voice slow, deliberate. We drive a stake through it. Meanwhile, behind closed doors at the DOJ, Garland met with intelligence liaisons. The room was cold. Deliberately so. A psychological tactic used in interrogation rooms. A screen displayed polling numbers. Public trust in the department had dropped 7 points overnight. Garland stood at the far end, hands behind his back, eyes fixed on the data. They've made this about names, personalities. What we built cannot be reduced to a clip and a headline. He turned. This is not a public trial. It's a controlled burn. He pointed to the board. Media flood. Create a counter scandal. Deploy the distraction package. Dig into Trump's old cases. Slander Bondi as partisan. One aide raised a concern. What if they call a hearing? Garland didn't flinch. Then we walk in wearing the Constitution. But we walk in first. Afternoon sunlight cut through the blinds of a committee room on the Hill. Aides hustled in with binders, folders, tablets. Phones buzzed every 5 seconds. The chairwoman, a seasoned senator with eyes like broken glass, barked into her staff. If that list hits the floor, this chamber becomes a live grenade. I want a preemptive oversight hearing. Tomorrow. Classified briefing by 9 a.m. pause. And subpoena the footage if it exists. If it doesn't, subpoena the noise. In a studio at the Daily Wire, a chalkboard already had the word Clinton written in bold caps. Bongino stood in front of it. Let's be honest, he told the camera. This isn't just one man's secret. It's a fortress of filth, and that fortress is cracking. He jabbed a finger at the board. This is why they fear Trump, because he doesn't owe the architects of this sewer a damn thing. Behind the scenes, Patel was already on the phone with committee staff. Tomorrow he speaks. At sundown, in a briefing room under heavy surveillance, Bondi prepared the witness folders, testimonies, affidavits, the list, not the copy, the original. She sealed it in a red envelope. Her hand hovered for a second before writing the label. For the record, for the people. She didn't smile. She just breathed in deep once and whispered to herself, "You built this circle to keep the world out. But the world is watching now." In the Senate basement, two staffers stared at a closed door. Behind it, the fate of the old machine rattled like glass under pressure. One whispered, "Do you think they'll say it out loud?" The other shook his head. "They don't have to. The room will know." And on the eve of the hearing, Trump stood before the mirror, straightened his tie, tightened his jaw. Outside, the lights of Washington shimmered like a kingdom unaware it was about to be tried in its own court. He didn't look away from his reflection. "Tomorrow," he said to no one, "we start pulling bricks." The cameras were locked in place, the microphones were live, and every seat in the Senate hearing room was filled, not just with people, but with pressure. The kind that vibrates through the marble, up the wood-paneled walls, and into the bloodstream of the nation. This was not just a hearing. This was a battlefield where truth wore a name tag and lies came dressed in law degrees. Pam Bondi sat at the witness table. In front of her, a thick red envelope. To her left, Kash Patel, arms crossed. To her right, Dan Bongino, eyes fixed, unblinking. Behind them, Trump sat in the second row. No expression, just presence. Across the room, Merrick Garland adjusted his glasses. Calm, poised, but his knuckles had gone white on the desk. The chair gavelled the hearing to order. This session of the Senate Judiciary Committee is now in session. The subject, federal handling of sealed evidence relating to Jeffrey Epstein and potential high-profile protection conflicts. A murmur rippled across the room like the rustle of leaves before a storm. "Ms. Bondi," the chair said, "you've prepared a statement?" Pam nodded. Opened the folder. No theatrics, just precision. Her voice rang out, clear, cold, like a blade drawn on marble. "This is not about a man, it's about a mechanism, one that silenced victims, obstructed investigations, and buried evidence under the weight of powerful names." She held up the envelope. "In this file are excerpts of corroborated footage, certified voice prints, and travel logs. One name appears on all three." A pause, and then she said it. "William Jefferson Clinton." Silence didn't fall. It slammed. No cough, no paper rustle, no breath. Only Garland moved. He adjusted his cuff as if to signal control, but the motion betrayed something else, an instinct to shield. Bondi continued. "The voice in file 3 says the words, 'She won't remember.' The footage aligns with archived surveillance logs from Epstein's island residence. The timeline is exact. The metadata is clean. And the ring on his finger matches authenticated images from White House archives." She slid the file forward. "I am placing this in the official congressional record." The chair looked shaken, but nodded. "It will be sealed under federal review until preliminary validation." Trump leaned forward. Loud enough for the microphone to catch, he said, "Seal it all you want. The vault's already broken." Garland was next. He stepped forward, adjusted his mic. "The department is aware of the concerns raised. However, we caution against the weaponization of unresolved materials in a politically charged context." Senator Hawthorne leaned in, voice sharp. "You're saying the voice print's not valid?" Garland didn't flinch. "We're saying validation requires more than timing and appearances." Patel stood. "Not permission, just truth." "Then explain why two witnesses tied to this file lost their clearance within 48 hours of speaking to Bondi's office." Garland shot back. "Coincidence is not conspiracy," Mr. Patel Bondi's voice cut in. "Number but suppression looks a lot like obstruction when it walks, talks, and signs subpoenas." The chair intervened. "Enough. This is a fact-finding session, not a constitutional duel." Trump stood now. No longer background. He spoke with no microphone. He didn't need one. "For 10 years I've said it. They laughed. They ignored. They said it was noise." He pointed to Garland. "Now the noise has a file number. Now the face is on tape. And now the fortress they built is missing a wall." The room shook with silence again. Outside the chamber, protesters had gathered. Some in red hats. Some holding signs that read, "No more circles. Unseal everything. The list is the law." Reporters swarmed. Phones live-streamed. The internet burned. The chair reconvened. "Given the gravity of today's disclosures, This committee will formally petition the Department of Justice to open an independent inquiry into the oversight and suppression of Epstein-related materials. Bondi's eyes didn't blink. Garland nodded once. Slow, tight, a war disguised as cooperation. As the session adjourned, Bongino whispered to Trump, "We didn't win." Trump didn't look away. Number. "But we cracked the shield." Patel added, "Now they'll either double down or collapse." Trump replied, "Let them choose. Either way, we keep swinging." That night, every network ran the footage. They blurred the still frame. But everyone knew the outline. Commentators tripped over each other to frame it. Some called it reckless. Others called it redemption. But one headline struck deeper than the rest. The circle broke, and a name escaped. They thought the hearing would break the storm. It didn't. It sharpened it. By sunrise, the Capitol was surrounded. Not by mobs, but by microphones. Cameras, questions. The air buzzed like a wire-stripped bear. Every studio called it the same thing. The split. One side demanded more. The other demanded silence. But neither could look away. At the Department of Justice, the doors slammed shut behind Garland. He walked fast. 2 aides trailing him like shadows. "Sir, the petitions are flooding in. 7 states are requesting full release of the Epstein files. 5 have issued open subpoenas for the Clinton evidence." Garland didn't slow. "Shred them in process. Bury them in review. We're not negotiating with pitchforks." He entered the Situation Room, closed the door. Inside, senior counsel's Black Ops liaison, Internal Affairs. He threw a folder onto the table. "Congratulations, they cracked the vault. Now we decide what they're really allowed to see." The folder read, "Special Classification, Counter-Disclosure Protocol." The lead counsel asked carefully, "You want legal action?" Garland's eyes didn't blink. "I want law used as sword, not shield." Meanwhile in Florida, Trump stood on the tarmac of a private airfield. Helicopter blades thundered overhead. Bondi approached, holding a single piece of paper. "They've issued a contempt warning. They want us to hand over the list." Trump took the page, read it once, tore it in half. "They used the law to hide monsters. Now they wanted to muzzle witnesses?" He turned to Patel. "Let's give them something harder to suppress." Patel nodded. "We announce the plan?" "Tonight." In a Manhattan newsroom, an emergency editorial meeting was underway. The editor-in-chief, face red with pressure, slammed a folder onto the table. "Clinton's PR team just threatened litigation. If we run with the photo unblurred, we're exposing ourselves." A journalist spoke up. "It's not exposure if it's truth." Another added, "This isn't about defamation anymore. It's about protection of them or the public." Silence. The editor leaned forward. "Then pick a side, because history doesn't do neutrality." That night, Trump walked on stage in front of an American flag. No teleprompter, no notes, just fury. This is no longer about footage. It's about fear, about a system that thinks the law belongs to those who can afford it. Applause thundered like artillery. He pointed straight at the camera. "They called it a circle of protection. I call it a wall of corruption. And tomorrow," he held up a folder, "we drop the names." Gasps, real ones. No leaks, no rumors. This was a declaration. Back in D.C., Garland sat in his office. The lights dimmed, the corridors quiet. He stared at a memo marked, "Trump team planning full disclosure. Immediate legal containment suggested." He stood, walked to the mirror, and whispered, "If you tear the shield, be ready for the sword." The list had detonated. The courthouse clock hadn't even struck 9 when the ground shifted beneath the Capitol. Not with bombs, with names, 14 of them. The last name wasn't whispered anymore. It was printed, posted, and spoken. On the Senate floor, in front of cameras, on schoolyard benches. And at 9:17 a.m., the shield struck back. At the Department of Justice, Garland signed the order himself. Pam Bondi, charged with unlawful release of sealed federal materials, interference with national security review, potential contempt of court. The language was cold, but the message, crystal fire. If you crack the vault, we bury you in it. The agents moved fast. No knock, no warning, No time to spin. By 10:04 a.m., Bondi was in custody. By 10:07, the country exploded. Cable news cut their programming. One anchor blinked twice before saying, Pam Bondi, former Attorney General of Florida and whistleblower in the Epstein list exposure, has just been taken into federal custody. The screen split. Images of protests outside three state houses, Texas, Ohio, Arizona, flags waving, people chanting. This is not law. This is cover-up. Trump was on air within the hour. He sat alone in front of an American flag. No intro, no pleasantries, just fire. This morning they arrested Pam Bondi, not because she lied, but because she spoke the truth without their permission. This wasn't law enforcement. This was message sending. Intimidation dressed up as process. He raised the affidavit again. This list is real. These names are real. And now they're trying to make reality illegal. His voice sharpened. So here's my message. If you want to put truth on trial, you better subpoena me next. The nation split again. By noon, 10 states filed emergency resolutions demanding Bondi's release. 4 governors refused federal cooperation until DOJ clarified its position. A dozen state AGs signed a joint letter. We will not allow the federal code to become a gag order. The cracks were no longer fractures. They were fault lines. At 1:23 p.m., a closed-door committee convened inside the Capitol. 5 senators, 2 federal judges, 1 terrified staffer. This is no longer sustainable, one judge said. Public trust is bleeding out by the second. They want a resolution, snapped the chair. We give them a spectacle. What do you mean? A hearing, full broadcast. Trump, Garland, face to face. A pause. Someone whispered, "That'll burn the temple." The chair replied, "Maybe it's time it did." At 3:47 p.m., the summons went out. Special emergency oversight hearing. Subject, abuse of federal authority and suppression of investigative disclosure. Witnesses, Merrick Garland, Donald J. Trump. Live, on every network. Bondi sat in her holding cell. She didn't cry, didn't speak. She just watched the door and smiled when the guard told her, "They want you released. Trump's coming." At sunset, Trump stood behind a bulletproof lectern at a rally outside D.C. His voice was lower now, slower, not weak, measured. America was never built to protect the powerful. We were built to protect the people from the powerful. He held up the affidavit once more. They used to hide names in sealed vaults. Now they want to hide us for revealing them. The crowd roared. One voice rose from the back. "Then let the vault fall." Back at DOJ, Garland stared at the Senate notice. The seal glared back at him. He didn't speak. Just folded the letter once, perfectly. Then turned to his aide. "They want a duel?" He straightened his cuffs. "Then we bring the shield." The chamber was packed. 3 layers of security, metal detectors, dogs, more cameras than seats. They called it a hearing, but it felt like a trial, with the nation as jury and history holding the gavel. The sign above the entrance still read, "In law we trust." But trust had become currency, and someone had been printing counterfeit. Pam Bondi walked into the chamber first. Free, but not untouched. Her wrist bore red marks from the cuffs. Her eyes, colder than steel, steadier than fire. She took her seat, placed the red folder in front of her. Folded hands, no apology. Trump entered next, no entourage, just a single American flag pin, tie straight, jaw locked. The room didn't cheer, didn't gasp. It held its breath. Then Garland, poised, crisp. Walking like the law wore his shoes, the chair struck the gavel. This committee convenes under full authority of the United States Senate. The subject, allegations of federal suppression, witness targeting, and public manipulation in connection to sealed Epstein-related evidence. First came the facts. Pam Bondi laid them out like bullets on a table. The footage exists. The voice print has been validated. The man in the tape is the same man whose name appears on flight logs, visitor records, and eyewitness depositions. All sealed, all scrubbed, all forgotten. She placed the still image on the monitor. Blurry, but unmistakable. The shield wasn't law. It was a firewall, built to keep the rot inside and the light out. The room stirred. Senators whispered. One aide vomited in the hall. Then Garland rose. He didn't stumble. He wielded language like armor. The department operates within the bounds of legal process. What we protect is not individuals, but integrity. The chaos outside this chamber is the consequence of weaponized disclosure. Trump leaned in. You mean truth, Garland snapped back. I mean disorder. An institution cannot endure if trust is torn by unauthorized exposure. Trump didn't flinch. You want trust? Start by earning it. Start by prosecuting the predator in the tape, not the prosecutor who released it. The room cracked, not physically, politically. A senator banged the table. Enough. This chamber will not become a campaign stage. Bondi spoke without raising her voice. No, Senator. It already has. The only difference now is the victims get a seat. A motion was filed live. Proposal to form a special independent prosecutor to review all Epstein-linked evidence, free from DOJ oversight. 4 senators signed, then 7, then 11. Enough to bring it forward. Garland's face didn't move, but his left hand clenched, once, beneath the table. Outside, the crowd had grown. Screens everywhere. Phones lifted. Children on shoulders. A chant began. Software. Then louder. Then thunder. The shield is broken. When it ended, Trump stood for a moment before leaving. A journalist called out, "What happens next?" He turned, not smiling, not angry, just sharp, like truth with a spine. We've pierced the shield, now we aim for the sword. The resolution passed at midnight. By dawn, the first subpoenas were printed, and somewhere in a quiet office buried beneath a marble building, someone shredded a flight manifest with trembling hands. Final lines, political commentary voiceover, off-screen tone. They built a wall to protect themselves. They called it justice. We called it law. But law, when chained to fear, becomes a cage. And tonight, for the first time in decades, someone found the key.